Well, hello. I'm Jim McGinnis. Hope you are well. Lazy afternoon here on the back porch. What I have for you is something called Pirates, Outlaws, and the Birth of American Democracy. I figured it was a timely, 'tis the season, and all that. I retreated to the porch the last few days with a good book, revisiting Marcus Rediker's Outlaws of the Atlantic. A gift I got. Thank you, TJ. It turned things a bit upside down for me, the way I like it. Outlaws is a fascinating look at how pirates and sailors and slaves were fighting for liberty and equality long before the American Revolution was fought. It piqued my curiosity, and I thought it might pique yours. Now, this was not my first look at pirates. Treasure Island captured my imagination long ago, and I've loved all the pirate movies I can find. Thank you, Johnny Depp. There's always been something liberating to Jimmy Buffett's romantic songs of adventure in the islands. And Rediker's book just took things a step further. Through the years, I've devoured the works of enlightened thinkers and the philosophical basis for America. But I could never shake the notion that our liberty is slightly more organic, if you would. Remembering that Thoreau went to the woods and Lincoln came out of the woods, it bolstered my notion. There's an edgy authenticity to the actual American way of life, and it can't be completely explained by the heady theories of social contract, for sure. Now, surely the American idea of freedom was a product of centuries of debate in the salons of Europe, but it's also the result of the stewing and simmering of traditions and experiences of people all up and down the social ladder, and up and down the coast for that matter. And here lies the importance of 18th century pirates. While I was reading it, my mind drifted off to North Carolina, as it often does, to the Outer Banks, where centuries ago dissenters and outcasts had embraced a purer form of democracy. Places like Hatteras and Ocracoke Island once overflowed with restless spirits, men and women that were absolutely stubbornly resistant to authority, thus making the coastline a haven for equality and for pirates. Jefferson's immortal words in the Declaration of Independence proclaiming liberty and equality for all reflected what he called the harmonizing sentiments of the day. But for over a century, there were pirates and sea dogs and mutineers already fighting and dying for those ideals. American democracy grew up in 1,000 places, but it may well have been born on a boat. Long before Lexington and Concord and the shot heard round the world, crew members were rising against tyrannical captains and seeking an end to something called impressment. Impressment means to be forced into military service. Now, let me tell you, wages and conditions in the British Royal Navy were just awful. And so much that the ships were constantly undermanned. So the King's Navy resorted to impressment to find labor. They would march onto the docks of ports from Halifax to Jamaica and arrest young working men. Now, the fight against impressment began as far back as the late 17th and early 18th century. Sailors in the Caribbean, and North America battled press gangs in every port. By the 1760s, the fights boiled over in Philadelphia, New York, and especially Boston. The struggles were against tyrannical captains. Sailors would say they were fighting for their liberty, a term for being on shore, away from tyrants and thugs. Sailors' riots inspired men like Sam Adams of Boston, who watched the battles and will articulate the struggle into the basis for the revolution. Now, another example of democracy born on ships lies in the term to strike. Now, as the son of a Union man, I did not know that strike originated at sea. But in 1768, London sailors protested a wage cut by going from ship to ship, taking down the sails, which is actually called to strike the sails. Of course, the traditional story of pirates is that they were brutes and criminals driven solely by greed. And these things have an element of truth. But most pirates were just common sailors, many of whom had been brutally mistreated by merchant marine and on naval ships. So they started capturing vessels and setting up their own ships so they could have a better life. Now, even if that life was very short, pirates couldn't be expected to live for a long time. A pirate ship was organized in a way dramatically different from the ruthless autocracy men had experienced. Royal Navy captains had complete power over their crew, even the power to whip someone to death. But when the mutineers seized control of a ship, the first step was to elect a captain on their own. They practiced democracy. They also divided up the loot, the booty, in a fair and equal way. Pirates even created kind of a social security system to provide for their comrades who were injured in battle. Now, Rediker's book led me to Robert Kurson, author of Pirate Hunters, Treasure, Obsession, and the Search for a Legendary Pirate Ship. It's a good story. According to Kurson, pirates had a constitution, and they took a vote on everything. Where to go, who to steal from, how to steal it, where to go next, and what to do with their prisoners. The captain's vote didn't count any more than the lowliest deckhand. If they wanted to get rid of the captain, they could dismiss him or lower his rank. They could maroon him on an island, or they could just throw him off into the ocean, but all by vote. And that was true even if a captain owned his own ship. Were these men thieves and outlaws? Surely. And as Rediker explained, pirates were trapped in an extremely violent system. And so that their own violence as pirates was a response to that. Often they were brutish thugs, but it seems a whole lot of looting and plundering and brutishness was done in the name of the British Crown and under the Union Jack. I guess the difference between piracy and British imperialism is determined by what flag you fly. People we regard as heroes and those we consider criminals depend on our point of view. As Kurson described, pirates would perform almost any kind of torture you could possibly dream of. But that was not what they wanted to do. What they really wanted to do was to scare the hell out of their prey. The message was, we're crazy. Don't mess with us, don't resist, just give up. And that's what the pirate flag announced when they hoisted it. The heroic ideas we connect with the American story can be found in the struggle between the common sailors and the iron fist of the Royal Navy. And Rediker insists that we need to understand the ordinary people who made history at sea. Hugely important modern ideas about race and class and government were born at sea. So there you go. Fair winds.